Charles Purcell presents.
Hi, this is Peter Donalds, aka Charles Purcell. I want to do something that I don't normally do. I want to get a little personal, and maybe very personal, and talk about the times we're living in right now. I don't do this, but I want to talk right now on almost what you might call a spiritual level. Now, I avoid this because I think it's mostly all bullshit. In fact, everything I'm about to say, I believe, is grounded in practical social science. So, I use the word spiritual only because, I can't give you a detailed proof of my theories. I'm not here to submit an analysis for peer review. I'm going to be talking very personally. So, what is the theory? Well, it starts with this. I believe with all my heart, there's the spiritual part, that in the end, love is stronger than hate, and that inclusion is more powerful than exclusion. I mean, Darwin himself wrote about the superiority of compassion and cooperation. He hated how his ideas were twisted into the sort of popular understanding of survival of the fittest. Because when he said the strong survive, when he said strong, he meant compassionate, cooperative communities that work together. That's what makes us strong. Well, right now, in our moment in history that we're sharing here, that twisted idea of survival of the fittest seems to be winning the argument. At least it's more popular than maybe it's ever been. And some very bad things are being done by some very bad people who are being supported by even more very bad people. And in this moment, they seem to be carrying the day. I don't know exactly what pain or what void in their lives brought them to do and believe the things that they do and believe. As I said, I'm not at all religious, so I don't believe in God or the devil or angels or any of that. But a great many people with whom we share the earth right now are agents of what we might call evil, for lack of a better word. But again, I don't know how they came to this sorry state. And this leads me to my most firmly held belief. Thou shalt not judge. The most quote-unquote religious tenet that I follow. Now, I arrived at this firmly held belief, not because of what I heard in Sunday school. I went to Sunday school for many years, and I rejected most of what I learned in Sunday school, especially the parts that separate people. I learned a lot of that in Sunday school. Separates them into tribes and nations, and believers and non-believers, and those who are destined for heaven or hell. I arrived at the thou shalt not judge thing strictly as an agnostic and an adherent to the scientific method and a proponent of left-wing social justice, old school. So I don't judge people. Every one of us landed on our particular spot for a myriad of reasons that the rest of us can never know. So no, I don't judge people. I do judge ideas. Oh, I'm a harsh judge of ideas. Ideas about beauty and goodness and truth. Ideas about equality, justice, and freedom. These are commonly known in the Western tradition as the 6 great ideas. Beauty, goodness, and truth, the more personal, esoteric, spiritual, if you will. And then equality, justice, and freedom, the great ideas we have to grapple with as a collective when, by choice or by circumstance, we find ourselves together in groups. And we have to somehow make that work. Ultimately, these 6 great ideas are the goals and standards by which we measure our lives, our personal lives, but more importantly, our collective lives. So, I do judge. I judge methods, rules and laws, mores and traditions. I judge these things based on whether they lead us toward our ultimate goals, the 6 great ideas, or away from them. And right now we're heading into a very dangerous direction. And we're forced to fight some extremely dangerous, even deadly ideas. Ideas concocted and now led by fallen women and men who we have to defeat. But we also have to love. Hey, there's my second religious tenet. Love your enemy. We have to somehow persuade them to join us in a righteous fight for those great public ideas, justice, liberty, and equality. So each of us has the same opportunity to find in our own personal lives the ideals of truth, beauty, and goodness. So, where are we today? Well, first, we have to be honest about past, present, and future tense here. We're no longer heading toward fascism in the United States of America. No, it's here. We're in it. Now, present tense. Now, it's in its infancy, but it is most definitely in the present tense. Now, I don't know how Trump, who I mockingly call the Orange Menace, I don't know how he got so screwed up. Apparently he had a terrible father. I don't know. And right now, I don't care anymore. It's not the problem that needs solving. We're way past that. On the same side of that coin, I'm no longer all that interested in dissecting his enablers, his followers, his voters. They seem to be this amalgam of lost souls, driven by fear or by greed or by bigotry. Are they fallen victim to this absolute blitzkrieg of calculated lies and disinformation? Or any combination of the above? I don't know anymore. And I don't care anymore. However they got to this place, it's up to us now to convince them that they are better than this. And that we are all better together. Now, we don't need all of them to suddenly defect to our side in order to win this battle of ideas. You know, it would help, especially Republican members of Congress and the judiciary. That would really help. But I don't have high hopes for them. So yeah, it would be great if they came over to our side, and maybe some of them will. But we're not holding our breath. But when we do ultimately win, and we will, we'll have to find a way to welcome them back to the land of sanity. But right now, our mission is clear, and we are on basically a kind of a battlefield. And there's something important to remember. American democracy was already in a very dangerous slide before the Orange Menace pushed it off the cliff. He and his minions were only able to do it because it was already weakened over decades. So at least to get back where we were, at the very least, we have to do the work of restoring what little democracy we had before the Orange Menace by removing him and his cabinet, rescinding all of his illegal executive orders, restoring government departments and agencies to their previous levels, the way they were established and funded by Congress, as required in the Constitution. We have to restore Congress and the courts to full co-equal branches of government, because they are not today. We have to restore the rights of a free press, who, by and large, have been beaten down, some still fighting, most surrendered, some happily. So if we want to remove the Orange Menace, remove his cabinet, restore the status quo to at least what it was pre-inauguration, well, how do we achieve these demands? There are boycotts, strikes, direct action, mutual aid, and alternative politics. First, the boycotts. We've had our first general boycott, a nice little shot across the bow, a one-day statement. But I believe strongly, based on where we are today, our current condition, we have to make those boycotts permanent. And by that I mean, to the greatest extent possible, humanly possible, we have to boycott all corporate goods. We have to withdraw from consumption, and especially from, Walmart, Target, Amazon, the big ones. But right now, I'm talking about everybody. You just stop spending. Of course, you need essentials. Get what you need. To the greatest extent possible, you got to go locally sourced. Now, don't think I'm going off the deep end here. If you need AA batteries for your emergency radio, okay, I understand you can't locally source AA batteries. Do what you have to do. But as a mindset, as a lifestyle, I'm saying anti-consumerism. We buy only essentials until we win. There's no end date on this. It's when we win. That's the end date. Divestment. Complete, total divestment from the corporate powers. And that means your bank. If you're in a commercial bank, a corporate bank, get your money out, put it into a local credit union. This also includes corporate media and social media. Now, personally, I'm a little on the fence regarding social media. Part of me says maybe we want to stay with the big platforms and get our voices out there. Part of me says, no, just totally scrap them. You tell me. I need advice on this issue. One thing I'm certain about is corporate media, though. Washington Post, New York Times, the major networks, cable broadcasters. Basically, anybody who's selling something. Anybody who pauses for a commercial sponsor, they're the ones you have to let go. Now, this becomes a challenge because we do need reporters, we need journalists. There are independent, non-corporate sources you can find. I always mention Amy Goodman's Democracy Now! There are others. There are international sources, better than our domestic options. So do what you can. Our boycott needs to become indefinite. And as I always say, we need to do it loudly. Let everybody know exactly who you're boycotting and why. Hand in hand, strikes. We got a couple general strikes coming up on the calendar. That's great. Most of us have to work. We have to make a living. We have to pay our bills. I understand that. I'm not asking you to do the impossible. But when there's a national strike scheduled, do everything you can to be part of it and let everybody know why. Hopefully there can be some longer-term strikes at some point. I think what I'd like to encourage you to do right now is really what I did my whole adult life. I was on permanent strike from the big corporations. I worked for nonprofits, I worked for school districts, I worked for the state for a while. I was an independent contractor, but I refused to sell my body and soul as a wage slave to American corporations. And I would encourage you to do that. Again, I'm not asking you to upturn your life overnight, but do what you can. If you're in a situation where you are just on the line manufacturing some plastic widget for some big, nameless, faceless, evil corporation, and nobody really needs the widget, it's just a way to keep the money flowing up to the top. If you're in that situation, do whatever you can to get yourself out of it. We need to starve them of our labor. Also, in our current condition, our particular moment in history, direct action is needed more than ever. The basics, the letters and phone calls to representatives, the rallies and the protests out on the street. Things like teach-ins that I love the notion of a teach-in. And then I'm always asking you to be creative. Artists, musicians, technicians. Let's be creative on the kinds of direct actions we can take. But the most important component of any direct action right now, we need to disrupt. We need to shut the country down. We need to make the status quo impossible. We need disruption. Violence? No, never. I will never condone violence. Nope. But I do ask for disruption. We need to shut down systems. We need to break this thing. It's the only way we're going to get results. People ask me about civil disobedience. I have a very sort of simple answer to that. Just look it up in the dictionary and follow the definition. Civil disobedience is a perfectly legitimate way to protest, to disrupt. You never do it violently. And when they arrest you, you go to jail. That's definitionally part of civil disobedience. You're doing it to make a statement, a very loud statement, and part of that very loud statement is taking the punishment. So make sure there's some cameras there. Make sure you get some coverage. The other thing that really needs to be stressed here is mutual aid. We have to take care of each other. If we're going to lay ourselves on the line here, if we're going to put ourselves forward in strikes and boycotts and direct action and civil disobedience, we need the support of our neighbors and friends. People are going to need food. They're going to need housing. They're going to need childcare, elder care, any number of things, transportation. We have to get together and take care of each other. And you can do this on your own. You can just basically be a good person and let all your family and friends know that you're available for them. Or, much better, become part of an organized effort. There are many examples of this over history. The most shining example, the Black Panthers of the San Francisco Bay Area, Oakland, during the Civil Rights Movement, where they set up schools, childcare, public health clinics, food banks. You name it, they did everything. A beautiful example of how mutual aid can support a movement. And that's what this is. This is a movement. It's not going to be over in a day or a week or a month or maybe even a year or 2 years. We got to fight this thing until we win. And then the last thing I'll mention is something I don't mention all that much because, to be honest, I'm a little skeptical. But yes, we have to engage also in alternative politics. And that's third parties, independent parties. The Democratic Party, I think, is a lost cause. If you want to still fight from within the Democratic Party and try to move them, okay, more power to you. If you think the Justice Democrats have a chance of achieving anything in that party, okay. I'm not going to tell you not to try. I'm more than skeptical about that. But independent parties, third parties, volunteering, running for office, politics is still a piece in the puzzle. I'm kind of not there, but I think it's worth mentioning because, yeah, it is a piece of the puzzle. And if that's your thing, okay, alternative politics. So boycotts, strikes, direct action, mutual aid, in alternative politics. Now, when we win, we want more than to come back to just that sort of bare minimum standard of kind of a democracy, kind of this failing democracy that we had before the Orange Menace. When we win, we need to give ourselves a chance of coming back much, much better. And I believe that what I just laid out, especially the sort of permanent boycotts, the permanent anti-consumerism, permanent corporate boycott replaced by locally sourced small consumerism, mutual aid, engagement in local and independent politics, engagement with local and non-corporate media. I think if we do those things as part of our movement, then we can keep them to sustain the movement after we win this battle. Because that will give us a long-range blueprint for a better life. The way we support each other, the way we consume, the way we take and create media will become permanent lifestyle changes and will make our lives infinitely better. And see, this is where I really can get pretty, almost spiritual about it. I mean, imagine a life centered on cooperation and mutual aid and purposeful work with a thriving care community, not centered on forced labor for slave wages, not centered on corporate-fed media and entertainment. A life where human interaction is the norm rather than scrolling all day, being hypnotized and amused by our screens. Imagine how much better life will be when your food is locally grown, how much better it will taste, how many more nutrients that food will contain. Our physical lives, our spiritual lives, the very experience of being a human being on this earth will have drastically changed. And then we can create a real democracy, something that we failed to do in the post-war era. We never quite got there, and then we put ourselves in the position of sliding into fascism once again, until it eventually happened. Slowly at first, starting with Ronald Reagan, and then more rapidly, and then the final fall off the cliff just in our recent times. And talking about the people we have to bring along. My goals for a better society are completely 100% inclusive. We are better together. And we can start to achieve what most of us already want. You've seen the poll numbers on some of these issues. The great majority of Americans, up into the 60s, 70s, even in the 90s percentage-wise, want to cut Pentagon spending. They want universal health care. They want legal abortion. They want common sense gun laws. Over 70% of Americans, which is disturbingly low, but still, over 70% of Americans believe that the climate crisis is real and needs to be dealt with. Same amount support labor unions. 80% of us want the rich to pay more taxes. Almost that many want a higher minimum wage. A supermajority wants tuition-free college, student loan debt relief. 84% of Americans want free pre-K and 3K. We all support same-sex marriage, except for the crazy few. We support term limits for Supreme Court justices, the end to the Electoral College. 90% of us oppose gerrymandering, and yet it continues. 72% of Americans want money out of politics. We can achieve these things. We already want them. So we've already got that. We've got the people already. But we can't achieve these things because money is at the center of everything we do. Corporations rule us. They rule our government, And only through direct action, boycotts, and strikes can we change that. We must come out of our current struggle better than how we went in. We need much more than that sort of bare minimum standard of a flailing democracy. We have to come out of it better and stronger. And then we can continue the American tradition of progress toward a more perfect union, something that I think all of us grew up with. If you're of a certain age, I'm not sure what the breakoff point is, but most of us grew up with the idea that that's just inherent to what America is. We get better. More people have freedom. More people have opportunity. Each generation does better than the last. That was assumed until very recently. We can get back on that track. It's the most American of ideas. Progress is right alongside diversity, equity, and inclusion. Yes, that's exactly what I said. Can you imagine any more quintessentially American idea than diversity, equity, and inclusion? How they turned that into a dirty word is a kind of sorcery that I could never explain. Diversity, equity, and inclusion, I mean, that is just red, white, and blue. But first, we are where we are. We have to fight and defeat the fascist takeover. Not the coming takeover, no, the one that's already happened. As I said earlier, it's still in its infancy, but we have to break it right now. We can and we will win that fight. So, I just wanted to share those thoughts with you today. I'm Peter Donalds, aka Charles Purcell. Thanks for listening. This episode of Charles Purcell Presents is available right now wherever you find your podcasts, or go to the website charlespurcell.com for the full archive and all the other series in the podcast family. Follow me on Facebook, write to me at charlespurcell@gmail. Thanks to our flagship terrestrial station, River West Radio, riverwestradio.com. Theme music composed and performed by Peter Donalds. From the New Arts and Media Studios in Milwaukee, I'm Charles Purcell.